Today is January 12th, 2017. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Al Boyd. Sir, where were you born?
I was born in Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison, Wisconsin. When's your birthday?
June 5th, 1936.
1936. Who is your father?
Edward Boyd.
Edward Boyd.
Right.
And your mother?
Gladys.
What was her maiden name?
Vinje, V-I-N-J-E.
You go through school in Madison?
Just outside of Madison, little town of McFarland, and high school was in DeForest, Wisconsin.
DeForest?
DeForest.
What year did you graduate?
1955.
1955. What type of work did your father do?
He was a railroad man for 17 years, and then he worked in factories in Madison
Okay.
in later years.
Now, when you went to school, did you live in Madison or did you live in McFarland?
Lived in McFarland first, and then in DeForest.
Okay. How large are those towns?
How large?
How large?
McFarland was about 450 people. DeForest was about 800.
Okay.
I lived on a farm nearby.
Okay. What chores did you do in the farm?
What chores?
Yes.
Everything. Milking cows, raising all of our own crops, including raising tobacco every year, which is very unusual for Wisconsin.
I didn't think that was tobacco country.
Yeah, there's a certain area up through there where everything is required.
Okay. Yeah.
Good growing season and the soil, proper soil.
Now, during World War II, did you help with the scrap metal drives?
Yes, I did. Scrap metal and surprisingly milkweed pods. The military used them somehow. I'm not sure. I think it was for parachutes or something.
Now, where did you take the milkweed pods and the scrap metal?
They had drop-off points around the area where they took it all, and it was all supporting the war effort. I was just a little guy, but I remember a lot of it.
Do you recall anything about rationing during the war?
Oh yes, yes. I come from a large family of 13 kids, and so my parents got ration stamps for each of us children over the years, and we had plenty of ration stamps, but no money. The well-off people had a lot of money, but no ration stamps. So I can remember my mother trading ration stamps to some of these well-off people. Made the playing field a little bit more level, and but she made do with a lot of things that people couldn't do anymore.
What about VJ Day when the war ended?
I remember it well. I was about 10 years old then, I think, and 9 or 10 years old. And I remember the day it happened. Of course, the word came out and spread like wildfire, and everybody went crazy. It was just people driving up and down the streets, blowing their horns, and older people shooting off guns into the air, and lots and lots of celebrating. I can pretty well remember most of that.
So when you were in high school, what did you do for recreation?
I went out, when I was in high school, I went out for track and baseball. I played both of them. I wasn't big enough to play football. Wasn't tall enough for basketball. So I enjoyed. Of course, being on a farm, I lose my train of thought. We had farm work to do. We had to be back home right after school to go to work on the farm till fairly late in the evening, get the cows milked and all that. So I didn't have a lot of time to go out for sports.
Now, I understand there was a depression in the early 50s. Is it?
It was still on. It was still on. 40s and 50s. We could feel it.
How did this affect you?
We were very poor. We were considered very, very poor. But of course, the main reason for that was because we were such a big family. Of course, you take a laborer back then didn't make much money, and so here we are trying to feed. My parents trying to feed 13 children. Of course, the oldest ones were off in war by the time the younger ones came along, and so we had to make do with what we had. Like I always said, my mother could make a meal out of a piece of toast, you know, something to get food down in her stomach until we got a better meal come along. They did a wonderful job of it. My father had an alcohol problem. That didn't help matters, but my mother seemed to hold everything together. She was a queen.
What did you do after high school? What did you do after high school?
Joined the Air Force.
Oh, okay. What did you do in the Air Force?
July 21st, 1955.
What did you do in the Air Force, or the Army, or the Navy, or the Marines?
Nearby in Madison, about 12 miles from where I lived on the farm, was an Air Force base. And they always had fighter aircraft there from the time I knew what an airplane was. And I used to fly and watch them fly over quite often. And I used to build model airplanes, so I had this fascination of airplanes, which I still have. So I made up my mind then that I'm going to go in the Air Force. I want to fly airplanes. Once I got in the Air Force, I got to think, well, I wasn't smart enough to be a pilot, so maybe I could work on them. Well, when I got in, they asked me if I'd like to fly. I sure would. So I ended up flying on the KC-97 in-flight refueling tanker, which I did. Where did I leave off?
You said you wound up on the KC-97.
Yeah, and so I ended up through my 22-year career flying on tankers, refueling other aircraft in flight. I was called a boom operator.
Now, where'd you go for your basic training?
San Antonio, Lackland Air Force Base.
Tell me about basic.
It was rough. Of course, years later, after I got to talking with a lot of the other services, Navy, Marines, and Army and all that, supposedly theirs was a lot rougher than ours. If you didn't believe it, just ask them. But yeah, it was rough. It was a hard 11 weeks.
What type of training did you have in basic?
Lots and lots of marching, drill and ceremony, and a lot of classroom, a lot of testing. We marched everywhere we went. We went to the mess hall. We marched to the mess hall. We went to church. We marched to church. No matter what it was, we marched everywhere. And it got very tiring after a while.
What's your most vivid memory of basic?
Oh, I can remember a few weeks after I got there, a young set of twins, I believe they were twins, or at least they were brothers, that were in a barracks a short distance from ours, and it was the Everly brothers.
Oh.
Going through basic training. I never got to meet them,
Yeah.
but I heard they were there.
Mm-hmm. And basic lasted how long?
11 weeks.
11 weeks. So from San Antonio, where'd you go?
I went to Wichita Falls, Texas, to what we call technical training, tech school. And I was there for about 3 months.
What'd you do there?
We went through learning the basic equipment on board an airplane, on board a tanker for in-flight refueling. It was more or less a maintenance course where we had to learn how to tell the difference between a piece of tubing and a valve or something of that sort. Learning to use proper tools and proper equipment. Because we're going to be working on airplanes that everybody's lives are at stake. Everybody on board the airplane, both airplanes, and the people on the ground under you that you could have fell on.
Now, would you be considered a mechanic on the airplane?
Well, at first we went through. It was all mechanic training that we went through in tech school, and then later on, I got stationed at Salina, Kansas, Schilling Air Force. Well, at that time it was Smoky Hill Air Force Base, changed to Schilling, where I actually got into flight training to become a boom operator.
Now, had you flown before?
No, never have flown before that.
When did you take your first flight?
That was in about early February of '56.
And that was at Wichita Falls?
No, I was at Salina, Kansas.
Okay. So, what was the attitude of the people in Wichita Falls toward you in the military?
I found it pretty good. Of course, we didn't get much time to go downtown. Once in a while you get a pass to go downtown, but very seldom. And you had to be careful. Overall, the relation was pretty good, but still there were little pockets of problems. So,
What kind of problem could there be?
oh, well, like we have today. You know, we had thugs on the street back then that liked to prey on young GIs. So they always warned us to go downtown in pairs. Don't go down by yourself. Pairs or even four at a time. So they pretty much looked after us.
Okay. So from Wichita Falls, where did you go?
From Wichita Falls is when I came to Salina.
Salina.
Yeah.
Now, what did you do at Salina?
Flying in a KC-97 tanker.
Now, what kind of type of airplane is a KC-97?
KC-97 was about like an overgrown B-29.
B-29, okay.
They put a double deck on it. It was about the same, well, it was more like a B-50, which looked like just like a B-29. But it was bigger and faster and all that. And, but it was made off that print. They just added a double deck to it, an upper deck and a lower deck. And they mounted a whole bunch of tanks inside there, both down in the lower deck and the upper deck.
Now, how much fuel can you carry in a KC-97?
On the KC-97, I don't recall, I wasn't involved with the weight and balance then like I was in the KC-135. But I forgot what you asked me.
How much fuel could you
Oh
carry?
yeah, I'd say probably around 15 to 20,000 gallons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in the KC-97, where's your position in the airplane?
Well, I rode in the back in one of the side troop seats, and we had windows back there, and we were scanners whenever we weren't operating the boom. And what we did there was watched out left and right side. Usually there's two of us, one on each side, and watch for other air traffic in the air, and or any else. And watch the back of the wing, engines smoking from an engine or got a hydraulic leak or something like that. We'd bring it to the attention of the pilot and the flight engineer. And then during the in-flight refueling, we went back in the boom pod, which we were laying on our stomach back there, facing backwards with a window. And the other airplane come up underneath us. And I'd lower the boom down, and when I got him in close enough, I'd hook up with him.
Now, how do you hook up?
Well, I had a little set of wings back there, we call rotavators, V-shaped wings. And I had a control stick for that in my right hand. In my left hand, I had another control stick that telescoped the boom in and out. There was 20 feet of it that's telescoped in and out of the outer part of it. And it had a nozzle on the end of it. And he had a receptacle that opened up in flight. And I'd plug down into that, and then he'd latch on. And then once he's latched on, he can move around up to a certain point, not very far, but he can move around some because you're hitting turbulence and air pockets and whatever, so you're hitting them approximately at the same time, at 400 miles an hour. When you're flying along, you're hitting everything at the same time, so you're kind of bouncing around. And so it took a lot of coordination, hand coordination, eye coordination. You had to have good eyes. And you had to be fairly quick-witted. Think on your feet. That's very, very, very necessary in this job. And in this job, it's different than most jobs because you got plenty of time to learn it. And this job here, you got to get good real fast. And they see to it. If you don't measure up, you're gone. They wash you out. Back to another job.
Now, what type of airplanes would you refuel?
We refueled back then mainly B-47 bombers, jet bombers, and also fighters. Some of the fighters. Nowadays they've got a lot newer fighters that they've got, including bombers like the B-1 and the B-2. And I refueled the B-52 back in those days. So later on, we went to the KC-135, and of course everything was stepped up bigger and faster and much more efficient.
Now tell me about your first flight.
First flight, we were rolling down a runway, and of course everything was new to me. I was very, very fascinated. I don't think I had time enough to get scared. And I think that's part of their reasoning in their training. We're rolling down the runway, and the next thing you know, we lift off, and I'm looking out the window and watching the ground move away from me. Then it started getting a little concerning, but I loved it.
Was that a KC-97?
KC-97. That was the tanker that had the big propellers on it.
Okay.
4-engine, biggest reciprocating engines ever built on that airplane.
What type of engine did you have?
They were Pratt and Whitney 4360. They were a big 28-cylinder engine, huge.
How many in the crew of KC-97?
Back then there was 6. Pilot, co-pilot, navigator, they were all officers. And then the flight engineer, boom operator, and radio operator, we were all enlisted.
Okay.
So it was a 6-man crew.
Okay. And you were always in the back of the airplane?
Yeah.
And you could see where you'd been?
Yeah, yeah. I'm laying on my stomach facing backwards.
Now, what unit were you assigned to at Salina? Was there a unit?
Yes, it was the 40th Bomb Wing,
40th Bomb Wing.
40th Air Refueling Squadron.
How long were you at Salina?
7 years and 1 day.
Okay. So you arrived at Salina when?
21st day of January, 1956.
The Cuban Missile Crisis. What did you do during the Cuban Missile Crisis?
By then I was all checked out. I was qualified at my job, and back in those days we were pulling a lot of alert, kind of like firemen being on duty, for like 3 days at a time. Back then we were on 7 days at a time, with the airplane what we called in a cock position. In other words, you get out to the airplane, hit minimum switches, get the engine started, and taxi out like we're going to World War III. Of course, it was always practice over all those years, still practice. And so we were ready to go at any moment.
Did you ever leave Salina during that time period?
Did I ever leave Salina? Yes.
Good.
We went on what we call TDYs, stand for temporary duty. Anywhere from overnight to months at a time. And I went to Goose Bay, Labrador, for a 90-day TDY, and then I went to Thule, Greenland for a 90-day TDY. That was a long time to be away from home.
What did you do in these TDY periods?
What
did you
What
do?
did we do? We flew missions,
Okay.
refueling bombers going up over the North Pole. I flew quite a few missions over the North Pole.
You ever go to Florida during the Cuban Missile Crisis?
No. We, when the crisis hit, all of us started to say it, we went on alert. We had every tanker on base and every bomber was on alert, ready to go at moment's notice. And that was, from what I understand, that was the closest we ever came to actually going to World War III. So,
What's your most vivid memory of Salina?
my wife, that's where I met and married her. So she's a Salina girl, Kansas girl. That's why I'm back in Kansas.
Yes. Ever have any close calls up in
Oh,
Salina?
yes.
Now, what would be a close call?
Well, in the old KC-97, twice in about 2 or 3 weeks. First time we took off, and bad weather, raining, freezing rain. We took off, we're climbing out, we built up a lot of ice on the propellers and on the leading edges. And all of a sudden the airplane quit flying, we stalled off and we're going down, about ready to crash. And they got the props de-iced in a hurry and started getting the rest de-iced. And we leveled off, climbed back out climbed up to altitude, went on and refueled our B-47 like we were scheduled to. Came back and landed, and it was uneventful other than that.
Yeah.
Then about 2 or 3 weeks later, we were coming on final approach about midnight, landing on the runway there at Salina. And about 2 miles off the end of the runway, all 4 engines just went down to idle. And never did figure out what caused that. And we ended up flying down between some tall hills up north of Salina and went down right between them. If we'd hit that hill, we probably would have wiped the hill off the map. Because we were loaded with fuel. High octane, 145 octane fuel. So we'd been in a big ball of fire.
Is that anything like JP4?
JP4 is more like a kerosene.
Okay.
It's kind of like a clean kerosene.
Yeah, okay. So when did you leave Salina?
I left there on the 21st day of January of 1963.
And where did you go?
I went to Rapid City, South Dakota, which was Ellsworth Air Force Base.
What did you do there?
I flew out of KC-135.
Now, what's the difference between a 97 and 135?
97 had reciprocating engines. I know it had 28 cylinders. Each engine had 28 cylinders. And KC-135 had jet engines, 4 jet engines. And it was much faster, climbed a lot higher, carried a lot bigger load. It was kind of like climbing out of a Model A into a Cadillac.
So the KC-135 would be like what?
Boeing 707.
707, okay.
It was built on the same airframe.
Okay. Now what is the crew of the 135?
That was a crew of 4.
Okay.
Had a pilot, co-pilot, navigator, all 3 officers, and a boom operator, which I was. It was a 4-man crew.
Were you still in the back?
No, my seat was up in the cockpit.
Okay.
I had a seat up there right behind the pilot, and about from me to you from in front of me. And I lost my train of thought again.
Where was your position in the aircraft?
My seat was just inside the cockpit door on the left, but for refueling I went way to the back end, dropped down in some openings back there that went over underneath the floor. I slid over there, there was a pad there, contour-shaped pad, and with a chin rest. I lay on my stomach there, and I had a window there that I was watching him come in, and I could line up and hook up with him and refuel him.
How long does it take to refuel an airplane on average?
Well, it all depends on how big the airplane was. B-52 was the biggest offload I ever did, was about 130,000 pounds. We always dealt in pounds because we always had to know what the airplane weighed. And which gallon-wise was probably roughly 20,000 gallons, 25,000 gallons, somewhere around there. A total of 31,000 gallons if we were full all the way to the top.
Now, how was the fuel transferred from your plane to the?
It was by pump. We had some pumps in the tanks. The tanks on the KC-135 was out in the wings and in the belly, the whole belly. Where airlines carried baggage, we carried fuel tanks. They were built right into the airplane. And wings were full, fuselage, belly of the fuselage was full, and it even had a tank way back up in what we call the tail cone, small tank.
Now, is the pump actually in the fuel tank?
Yes.
Okay.
And the pilots controlled the pumps.
Okay.
All I did was made the hook up and kept him in position as long as I could, and the pilots would pump the fuel.
Okay.
When they had the prescribed amount of fuel pumped to them, they'd call me, say, okay, boom, he has his fuel. So I'd call him, I'd say, okay, had a call, we both use call sizes, Joe 1-2, you have your prescribed offload. Then he could go ahead and disconnect, back off. I could disconnect him, or he could disconnect, and he could back off, and then if he wanted some practice, he'd come back in again. And we may do practice hookups for 3-4 hours on end. That was hard work when you did that.
Yeah.
You were wore out after 3-4 hours.
Yes.
But in most cases, he'd take his fuel and then maybe 1 or 2 practice hookups, or maybe none at all. Maybe he's in a hurry to get where he's going.
Where were you when President Kennedy was assassinated?
I can tell you exactly where I was. I was in a room in what we call the transit quarters at Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, in a library. We were on alert. We had one room for a library and a TV room, and
What kind of room?
a library and,
Library,
and a TV room,
Yes, okay.
along with a game room, cards and stuff like that. And I was in that library reading, and this young staff sergeant came running down the hallway and says, "Hey, guys," he says, "President Kennedy's been assassinated." And of course, we were all dumbfounded, we couldn't believe it. So he went in and turned the TV on, and we couldn't believe what we were hearing and seeing. So, oh yes, I remember that very, very well. Yep.
Did you go on alert at that time? Or was
Yes. Yes, we were on alert, and we went on what we call increased alert. In other words, more airplanes were put on alert, ready to go at a moment's notice.
Did you think there would be anything between the Soviets and the U.S. at this time? Because the Cold War was going full blast.
Well, being one of the old heads, go back a long way, we were led to believe that Soviet was a really bad deal, which I really believe that. I really believe. Matter of fact, I think that China is going to be a big problem in the future if somebody doesn't do something about it. But we were led to believe that Soviet Union was a big, big, big problem. And of course, that's why we were there, why we were on alert. Because actually it boils down to one thing, that's communism. And I'm sure we were brainwashed along the way. You get that way. You do the same thing over and over and over and over every day. It sinks in after a while.
So you're at Rapid City how long?
I was stationed there twice.
Twice.
Yes, I was there about 5.5 years, up until December '68. '63 to '68. And went to Altus, Oklahoma for 1 year. And then back to Ellsworth for about another 7.5 years. I retired from there in the 1st of November of '77. So it's all history after that.
Now, did you go to Southeast Asia?
Oh yes, many times. We went over there, I mentioned TDY a while ago, temporary duty. We used to go over there about 3 months at a time. Home about 3 months and back in 3 months, just kind of like a yo-yo back and forth. Twice we went over for 6 months at a time, TDY. That's a long time to be away from home. And so through the 10 years of the Vietnam War, I was over there lots and lots of times.
Yeah, where were you based over there in Vietnam?
Well, we went over mainly to Okinawa. And then we branched out from there, and they'd sent us to usually Thailand. We were going into an air base at Bangkok at first. Then they built a brand new Air Force base down on the coast of Sea of Siam, and built a brand new Air Force base there. And I was on the third tanker to land in there on that brand new base. Very primitive at that time. And then we flew mainly out of Okinawa to not only to Thailand, but we flew to Taiwan, Philippines, Guam. Even spent some time at Wake Island. We flew all over Southeast Asia.
Were you still flying the KC-135?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what airplanes were you refueling during Vietnam?
Mainly fighters, F-105s, F-100s, F-104s, B-66, B-57s. Of course, B-52s was the big main thing. But we refueled everything. Anything that had to be refueled over there. Air Force airplanes. We didn't refuel Navy back in those days. But we refueled anything that needed fuel. Of course, over there, they'd take off so heavy that they'd have to get up in a tanker and get fuel to get to the target. And then they had to come back to the tanker to get fuel to get back home. Yeah. They couldn't make it either way without us. They called us the flying gas station. The only thing we never did figure out how to give them green stamps. But I used to wash their windshield. They'd get down right underneath my boom, and I'd line it up with the windshield, and we hit what we call the dump switch. And a finger came around, opened up the valve on the end of the boom and the nozzle, and we could spray fuel across our windshield. And they turned their wipers on, back and forth. It went about that fast too. Yeah, it was kind of neat.
Now, did you ever land in Vietnam?
Yes, one time. I landed at Da Nang.
Da Nang.
In 1966. We were on our way to that brand new base in Thailand when we had to land in there in emergency.
Emergency?
Well, had some fighters that we were supposed to refuel, some F-4s, and we were flying out of Okinawa. And the fighters got a delay, 2-hour delay, and we didn't know about it. And we did the first 2-hour delay. In the meantime, they had another 2-hour delay. We didn't get that one, so we went ahead and took off. Yeah. Got over there, we were there 2 hours early. Well, the fighters weren't ready for us yet. So when they finally got the fuel low enough where they'd come to us get fuel, lost my train of thought again. But
you said you landed at Da Nang.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And they so we had to give them the fuel as it was. In the meantime, we'd burned up part of their fuel in our own engines, and so we had to go ahead and give them all the fuel that we could up until, we had to keep a certain amount in the tanks in case we couldn't get back to our home base, where we'd go someplace else. So anyhow, we went ahead and pumped that fuel, then we landed in Da Nang, refueled there. And they came on board, the colonel came on board, told us don't go anywhere except right here at the airplane, refuel on the ground, refuel just enough fuel to get to your next point. And then we want you off of here. And they says, right up there in that mountain, about 5 miles away, is a whole bunch of enemy trying to get some rockets and mortars in place to lob down here on us. And we don't want you here. Well, we went ahead and got off the ground in about an hour and 15 minutes, which is darn near impossible. And the next day, the base got pounded really hard. And it was retaliation for letting those tankers, we had 2 tankers landed there, for letting those tankers land on your base.
Now, over Vietnam, where would you refuel the airplanes? Over Vietnam or?
Over Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia in later years, up over the Gulf of Tonkin. We couldn't fly closer than 30 miles to any Vietnamese held territory.
Why?
Because we had no protection.
Okay.
See, we had no protection of any kind other than fighters flying around.
Yeah.
And they pretty well took care of us.
Okay. Now, were we allowed to fly over Cambodia and Laos?
In early days, we couldn't fly over Cambodia. They were an enemy.
Yeah.
Well, somewhere along the line, something happened politically, and all of a sudden, they were friends with us. The day after, they were threatening to shoot us down if we flew over their country. We were flying over their country legally, refueling fighters. So, friendly one day, not friendly the next.
Why were we in Vietnam?
Stop the flow of communism.
Did we?
I don't know. I don't know. It seems to be still pretty prolific.
Yeah.
One of them right down here off our Gulf Coast.
Yes. So, now when did you retire?
November 1st, 1977.
1977.
That's
Now-
when I came to independence.
Yeah. Now, were you at Rapid City when you went TDY to Vietnam?
Yes.
Okay. What is your most vivid memory of your Air Force career? What's your most thing that sticks in your mind? Besides your wife.
Yeah. I enjoyed Rapid City in the Black Hills. Of course, I'm an outdoorsman. I love to hunt and fish, or I like to just be out in the woods walking around, which I used to do that a lot. And when I was stationed here, I'd go out to the Black Hills and go up logging roads and take another little path or whatever I could drive on. And then I might get up and walk another 2-3 miles up and down the hills. That I enjoyed. When I first got assigned to Rapid City, a lot of my buddies there up here at Salina, that's where I left from to go to South Dakota, were trying to tell me, you're not going to enjoy that. You're not going to like Rapid City, South Dakota. Cold and windy and miserable. I said, I don't care. I'm going to love it. And I did. My whole family loved it. When we decided to retire and move here, it was a hard choice to make between staying there or moving here.
Why'd you come to Independence?
Well, my wife had a brother and his family. In fact, you just met him out here in the hallway.
Okay.
Her brother died when he was 48. It was back in '82, I think it was. And he started this company that we're sitting in right now. And it was across the street back then. But lost it again.
Why'd you came to Independence?
Oh yeah. I came here because of her brother and his family back when we used to visit here. We always liked it. Mm-hmm. And it was either take a dart and throw it in a map, say, okay, we're going to live there, or bring my wife back home to her family. Now, most of her family was in Salina. That's where they started out. And that's where I met her. And I thought, well, all these years I've had her and the kids away from their family. So I thought, well, I'm going to bring them back and try it. We're going to try it. Well, we're still trying it 40 years later.
Now, you never thought of going back to Wisconsin?
Yeah, just in visiting.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought about moving there, but then I got to thinking, I'm going from one cold place to another. It is, they're getting it up there right now.
Yeah.
Most of my brothers and one of my sisters is up in that area.
What'd you do after you retired?
I went to work in a small factory here in town, and I ran the production section for about 21 years.
Which factory?
Called Brewest Industries back then. Now it's Catalytic Industrial Group. I go back and visit once in a while.
Yeah. What'd you do there?
We built catalytic heaters, industrial catalytic heaters, flameless heaters. And we built those and enclosures to put them in for heating valves and regulators and so forth out in the pipelines. Use a lot in the pipelines. Plus, we built, in later years, large heaters and ovens for processing different types of products that needed heat, high heat, like painting and that sort of thing.
Would you join the Air Force again?
Oh yes, when what was the crisis? Was it the Cuban crisis? No, it was Desert Storm. When Desert Storm broke out, several of us around here thought about trying to re-up again. And a good friend of mine here in town actually made some contacts. Of course, he retired quite a bit later than I did. And tried to get back in, they wouldn't take him. I figured, well, if they won't take him, they won't take me. But I would have gone in.
I like your word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction. The first one is basic training.
Very good for a young person. Teach you discipline and appreciation. Very good experience.
Tech school.
Tech school. A lot of wasted time. Simply because when I got into my squadron, that's where I started training and what I was going to do. All this other stuff was nuts and bolts and equipment, maintaining and whatever. And it was a lot of things that I learned when I was on a farm, working on farm machinery. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Like farm machinery, worked on it every day. And I knew what kind of wrench I needed for this and for that, You had to have it. You gotta have it on your accomplishments.
Yes.
And, but, I did learn a lot there.
KC-97.
Wonderful airplane. Boeing airplane. That's the key word, Boeing. The 135 was Boeing. The new tanker coming out has 767 Boeing. B-52, B-47, all Boeing.
Yes.
So, they were, KC-97 was a great airplane for at that time. We were the backbone of the Air Force. Airplanes are able to fly a lot further and a lot faster. So we've progressed.
KC-135.
Wonderful airplane, super airplane, very safe. Lost a lot of them, but a lot of them were career. Some of them was machinery breaks.
Now, how would you lose an airplane?
Oh, no bad operations in a cockpit. Crew error, a lot of that. Airplane itself broke, a lot of cases, but a lot of the systems were redundant. And so if you had a problem, you could usually work around it. During 50 years, over 50 years of flying that airplane, still today, they've only had one successful bailout. Clinton Sherman, Oklahoma, they were stationed there, and he had an engine on fire. And he pilot bailed his crew out, or attempted, and the boom operator and navigator jumped, and the pilot and co-pilot was able to get the fire out, and they landed the airplane. That's the only successful bailout in that airplane. Most of them were at a point where no matter what, you couldn't have saved them.
Yeah.
But overall, average, it's been a great airplane, and it still is a great airplane, still being used today.
Boom operator.
Boom operator, very proud to be one. We call on a crew, we addressed each other by position. In other words, pilot was a captain or major, whatever. I didn't call him that. On board the airplane, I called him pilot. I was boom or boomer. Navigator was a nav. Pilot, co-pilot was a co. You know, we lived with a lot of that. And yeah, that was a good job. Very proud I did it. Not sorry for 1 minute of it.
Now, would the same crew have the same airplane on every mission?
No, we were assigned, in the early days we were, in the KC-97. That didn't mean that you didn't fly another airplane, because we had 2-3 different models of it. And each one required different procedures. But like we had an A model, B model, F, G, and H models and all that. There's variations in them, but they were all still flyable about the same way. So, very, very prolific airplane.
Vietnam.
Big waste of life. I didn't used to think that. I thought, well, they sent us over there for a reason. Because we need to stop communism, we need, all the different excuses that they use. But we were, like I say, we were brainwashed. We were, this was pounded into us daily, every day. And you believe it after all. But I think that even today in Afghanistan and over that area, we're losing too many, and maiming too many of our young people. And of course, the older you get, the more that affects you. And I get choked up about every time I think about it now. These kids, we shouldn't be doing that to them.
Dwight Eisenhower.
My hero. I used to see him whenever he'd come back to Abilene for the museum. He'd come back for different reasons. He'd fly into Schilling up here in Salina, and then they'd drive him over to Abilene. And when he'd land, they'd have a whole bunch of his troops out there in uniform to greet him when he came in. So I got to see him several times, and he was special not only as a president, but as a 5-star general. That's what I look up to. And every year in October, VFW goes up, I don't remember what date in October, but Eisenhower's birthday. And of course he's buried there at Abilene in the chapel. And we go up there and stand what we call vigil in front of his grave for usually each of us are standing there at attention by the grave with a rifle for 5, 10, 15 minutes. It's symbolic. And so when you do that, you get a 5-star in a circle that you can wear in your hat or wherever. And that affects you mentally when you're standing there thinking to yourself, not only the president, but that 5-star general. You know, that means something.
John Kennedy.
John Kerry.
No, Kennedy. John
Oh,
Kennedy.
John Kennedy. Yeah, he was a favorite. I voted for him way back then. And when that happened, of course, you had to be a pretty hardhead to not get choked up over it.
Lyndon Johnson.
Very controversial. I liked Lyndon Johnson. I liked him a whole bunch, but I think when the Vietnam War came along, something happened. And I don't know what, but I know it wasn't good. Between he and McNamara, I think they messed up the Vietnam War. That's my opinion, of course.
Richard Nixon.
I liked Richard. I think he just got caught at something that all of them were guilty of up to a point. I think back to my mother-in-law. Oh, she didn't like him at all. Very, very religious lady. Very religious lady. But she didn't pull the punches when she talked about Nixon.
How do you want to be remembered?
What?
How do you want to be remembered?
Oh, as being a patriot, highly patriot. I feel that I was privileged to come from mere scratching for a living through my childhood up until I got through high school. It was a struggle, but I broke free of it, and I'm proud that I did.
Yes.
Very proud that I did.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, no, I think you pretty well covered it. I'll probably think of a half a dozen things after we leave here.
Well, sir, this is an excellent interview.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
Well, and I thank you for your service.
And again, this is January 12th, 2017. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Al Boyd. Thank you.
Thank you.